Hey guys, tonight we are going to strip away the marble columns and the pristine white togas you see in movies and drop you right into the gritty, smelly, precarious reality of the ancient world. We're waking up in Rome, but not in a palace. You're waking up in a wobbly wooden box, suspended 60 feet in the air, listening to the city groan awake beneath you. It's loud, it's crowded, and frankly, without your antibiotics and noise-canceling headphones, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Go ahead and let me know in the comments where you're drifting off from tonight and what time it is in your corner of the world. I love seeing the map fill up. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes. It's dark, pitch black actually, because your room has no windows, only a small wooden shutter that opens onto a narrow, terrifyingly steep staircase. The air in here is thick. It's heavy with the smell of stale smoke, unwashed wool, and the faint, sweet scent of rotting garbage drifting up from the street below. You are lying on a straw mattress that feels less like a bed and more like a sack of dried grass that's actively plotting against your spine. Welcome to your new home, a cenaculum, a cramped garret apartment on the top floor of an insula. Now, when you picture Rome, you probably picture sprawling villas with open courtyards and bubbling fountains. But that's the 1% lifestyle. For the vast majority of the million or so souls packed into this city, life happens in these high-rise tenements. And when I say high-rise, I mean it. These buildings are the ancient equivalent of a Jenga tower played by a drunk giant. They can soar up to 6 or 7 stories high, built from timber, mud brick, and a primitive form of concrete that is slowly but surely cracking. You sit up, brushing a few unidentified insects off your arm. Let's just call them roommates and move on. You realize very quickly that gravity determines your social status here. In our world, the penthouse is the ultimate luxury. In Rome, it's the opposite. The wealthy live on the ground floor, where the walls are thick, the ceilings are high, and crucially, you don't have to climb 200 steps to get to your front door. You, my friend, are poor. That means you live in the attic. The rent is cheaper up here, but the risks are significantly higher. You swing your legs over the side of the bed, and the floorboards creak ominously. You freeze. The walls of this insula are notoriously thin. Juvenal, a Roman poet who loved to complain about everything, once wrote that the city is held up by slender props, and that the landlord covers up the cracks in the old wall while telling the tenants to sleep soundly as the ruin hangs over their heads. It's a little comforting to know that slumlords aren't a modern invention. They are an ancient tradition, passed down through the ages like a family recipe, except the recipe is for negligence. You decide to risk movement again. You need light. You fumble around for a small clay oil lamp. You strike a spark against flint, which takes a frustratingly long time, and finally, a tiny, flickering flame sputters to life. The light reveals your domain, a room about 10 feet by 10 feet, There is no kitchen, there is no running water, there is certainly no bathroom. If you need to cook, you use a small brazier, which is essentially a metal basket of hot coals. This brings us to the terrifying reality of your morning routine: fire. As you look at that little oil lamp, remember that you are surrounded by dry wood, straw bedding, and neighbors who are also lighting open flames. Rome burns constantly. It's almost a background feature of the city, like traffic is for us. Historians still argue whether the famous Great Fire of 64 AD was actually arson or just the natural result of packing 1 million people into wooden tinder boxes and giving them all candles. If a fire starts on the ground floor, you, up here in the cheap seats, are trapped. There are no fire escapes, and the stairs are likely already chimney chutes of smoke. But let's not panic just yet. You're alive for now. You move to the shutter and push it open to let in some air. The fresh air that hits you is a solid wall of noise. Even at dawn, Rome is deafening. The wheels of heavy delivery wagons, which are banned during the day to prevent gridlock, are just finishing their night shifts, rumbling over the basalt cobblestones like thunder. You hear a donkey braying in the courtyard, a baby crying through the paper-thin wall next door, and a shouting match between two shopkeepers below. You lean out carefully, very carefully, because safety railings are merely a suggestion here, and look down. The building sways slightly. It's actually common for these insulas to just collapse. No fire, no earthquake, just gravity winning the war against shoddy contracting. Cicero, the famous orator, once joked about how 2 of his investment properties had collapsed and the others were cracking, calling it merely annoying rather than a tragedy. It's easy to be philosophical about structural failure when you aren't the one sleeping under the buckling roof. While you gaze down at the alleyway, you notice a peculiar architectural feature. The building seems to lean out over the street, the upper floors wider than the bottom ones. This is effectively the ancient version of cheating the zoning laws. The government taxes the footprint of the building on the ground, so builders just make the upper floors hang over the street to maximize space. It makes the alleyways below perpetually dark and claustrophobic, creating a tunnel-like effect that traps all the smells. Speaking of smells, your stomach growls. You haven't eaten since yesterday's porridge. You look around your room for food. You have a jar of something that might be pickled olives, or possibly just very old grapes. It's hard to tell in this light. There's no refrigeration, obviously. The concept of leftovers is a dangerous game of bacterial roulette. Most Romans in your position don't cook at home. The risk of burning the building down is too high, and the ventilation is non-existent. Instead, you'll have to head out to a popina, a street-side wine bar, to get some hot food later. But first, nature calls. And this is the moment the reality of the insula truly hits you. You look for a toilet. There isn't one. There isn't even a bucket in the corner, because you emptied that out the window last night, a practice that is technically illegal, but universally practiced. If you really need to go, you have 2 choices. Use a jar and carry it down 6 flights of stairs, or hold it and run to the nearest public latrine. You decide to brave the stairs. You wrap your tunic around you. It's a bit chilly in the morning air, and step out into the hallway. It's narrow, dark, and smells aggressively of boiled cabbage. You can hear the intimate lives of a dozen families as you descend. Coughing, praying, arguing. It's a hive of humanity. As you reach the ground floor, the air changes. It's cooler, damper. You step out of the dark stairwell and into the blinding, dusty light of the Roman street. The transition is jarring. You survive the night in your swaying tower of wood and bugs, but the day is just beginning. You are just one tiny ant in the massive colony of the empire, and the city doesn't care if you're tired, hungry, or smell like wood smoke. You have places to be, and unfortunately, so does everyone else. You step out into the street, clutching your stomach, eyes scanning the chaotic urban sprawl for relief. In the modern world, finding a restroom is usually a quest for privacy, a locked door, a fan, maybe a scented candle if you're fancy. In ancient Rome, that concept doesn't exist. You are looking for a farica, a public latrine. And when you find one, tucked between a bakery and a cloth merchant, you realize that your morning routine is about to become a spectator sport. You pay a small copper coin to the conductor, the latrine operator, at the entrance. It's a small price to pay for not having to squat in an alleyway, which is technically illegal, though the graffiti complaining about people doing it anyway suggests the law is loosely enforced. You walk inside, and the atmosphere is surprisingly convivial. It's not a dark, shameful dungeon. It's actually quite bright. The walls are painted with frescoes of dolphins or scenes from mythology, perhaps an attempt to elevate the mood. But the centerpiece of the room is the bench. It's a long, continuous slab of marble that lines 3 walls of the room, punctuated by keyhole-shaped cutouts every couple of feet. There are no stalls, there are no dividers, there are no occupied signs. You pick a spot next to a burly man discussing the price of imported grain and a soldier adjusting his sandals. You hoist up your tunic and sit down. The marble is cold against your skin, a stark wake-up call that rivals any double espresso. This is the Roman water cooler moment. People come here to chat, to gossip, to network. It's entirely possible that major business deals or political alliances are being forged right now, mere inches from where you are trying to handle your biological business. The lack of embarrassment displayed by the locals is almost impressive. To them, this is just another bodily function, like eating or sleeping, performed in the company of friends. To you, a time traveler accustomed to locking the door even when you're home alone, it is a nightmare of vulnerability. Beneath you, you hear the rush of water. This is the marvel of Roman engineering at work. A continuous stream of water, diverted from the aqueducts, flows through a channel under the seats, whisking waste away into the Cloaca Maxima, the Great Sewer. It's an incredibly advanced system for the ancient world, reducing the smell significantly, though significantly is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. The air is still thick with ammonia, dampened only slightly by the open roof that lets in sunlight and rain. As you sit there, trying to avoid making awkward eye contact with the man opposite you, you notice something unsettling about the infrastructure. It's not just waste that travels through these sewers. The dark, damp tunnels beneath the city are a superhighway for vermin. It is not unheard of for a rat, or something worse, to scurry up through the opening beneath you. There are even stories of octopuses swimming up the drains from the Tiber River into seaside latrines, though that's probably a fear for another city. Here, you mostly worry about the rats. And then there's the fear of the supernatural. The Romans are deeply superstitious, and the toilet is no exception. They believe that demons can lurk in the dark openings. Worse, the buildup of methane gas in the sewers can occasionally cause explosions, literal blasts of fire shooting up through the seat. This is why you might see a small shrine to the goddess Fortuna or the goddess Cloacina, the cleanser of the sewer, near the entrance. Before you sat down, you might have muttered a quick prayer, not for spiritual salvation, but just to ensure your backside doesn't get singed by an infernal sewer burp. But the true test of your resolve comes when you are finished. You look around for the toilet paper. You check your pockets. You check the wall. There is nothing. Rome has not discovered the joys of two-ply tissue. Instead, your eyes land on a small gutter of water running along the floor in front of your feet. This clean water channel is there for washing. Floating in the channel, or perhaps resting in a bucket of vinegar and salt water, is a stick. Attached to the end of that stick is a sea sponge. Meet the xylospongium, quite possibly the most feared object in historical hygiene. The process is simple in theory. You pick up the stick, rinse the sponge in the running water or the vinegar bucket to sterilize it. Do what you need to do, rinse it again, and put it back for the next person. Yes, you heard that right. It is a communal sponge. The person sitting next to you just used it. The person before him used it. And now, it is your turn. Historians still argue whether the sponge was actually used for wiping oneself, or if it was essentially a toilet brush used to clean the stone seat before you sat down. Some scholars desperately want to believe the latter because the alternative is horrifyingly unhygienic. However, the ancient texts, including a particularly grim story from the philosopher Seneca about a gladiator who committed suicide by choking himself on one of these sponges, suggest they were indeed for personal use. You stare at the innocent-looking marine organism on the end of the stick. It's brown, porous, and dripping with vinegar. The vinegar is an antiseptic, sure, but is it enough of an antiseptic to bridge the gap between you and the stranger who just left? Probably not. Modern microbiology would have a field day in that bucket. But you have no choice. You take a deep breath, grab the handle, and participate in the ritual. The vinegar stings, the texture is rough, and the psychological damage is permanent. Once the deed is done, and you've returned the terror stick to its brine, you wash your hands in a nearby basin. The water is cold, flowing from a fountain mouth shaped like a lion or a river god. You dry your hands on your tunic because, again, paper towels are 2,000 years in the future. Walking back out into the sunlight, you feel a strange mix of relief and contamination. You've survived the Foraca. You've navigated the social minefield of communal evacuation. You've faced the sponge and lived to tell the tale, but as you merge back into the crowd, you become acutely aware of the hands you are shaking and the food you are about to touch. Every person you pass has likely visited a similar establishment this morning. The senator in the pristine white toga, sponge user, the beautiful lady in the palanquin, sponge user. It puts a different spin on the grandeur of Rome. We see the statues and the conquests, the eagles and the legions. But underneath it all is a city held together by uncomfortable intimacies and a shared resignation to the fact that hygiene is a team sport. You shake off the shivers and focus on the road ahead. The sun is climbing higher, casting long shadows through the narrow streets. The city is fully awake now. The noise has shifted from the low rumble of wagons to the high-pitched chaos of commerce. Shopkeepers are throwing open their shutters, beggars are taking up their posts, and the smell of baking bread is starting to compete with the smell of the sewers. You are clean, technically speaking, or at least you are as clean as a Roman gets at this hour, but your skin feels tight and itchy. The wool of your tunic is digging into your shoulder, and you realize that while you've dealt with the internal plumbing, the external covering is a whole other problem. You look down at your clothes. They are rough, heavy, and if you look closely, not exactly white in the modern sense. They have a yellowish tint and a peculiar, faint odor that seems familiar. It's time to talk about laundry, and trust me, if you thought the toilet sponge was bad, you are not going to like how the Romans keep their clothes bright and fresh. Let's focus on that itch for a moment. You shift your shoulders, trying to find a comfortable position inside your clothes, but it's a losing battle. In the modern world, we are spoiled by cotton, silk, and magical synthetic blends that wick away moisture and feel like a gentle hug. In Rome, unless you are incredibly wealthy and have access to imported Chinese silk or Egyptian linen, you are wearing wool, and not the soft, expensive merino wool you might buy at a high-end hiking store today. This is rough, sturdy, utilitarian wool. It's durable, sure, but it feels like you are wearing a carpet. Underneath this tunic, you are likely naked. Historians still argue whether the average Roman wore a sublegaculum, a type of loincloth or primitive underwear, on a daily basis. While we have mosaics of gladiators and athletes wearing them, for the average citizen just trying to get through the day, going commando under the tunic allows for better airflow in the stifling heat. So it's just you and the scratchy wool engaging in a day-long friction war against your own skin. If today is a special occasion, maybe you need to visit a court or greet a patron, you have to layer up. You have to put on the toga. Forget everything you learned from fraternity parties. A real Roman toga is not a bedsheet tied with a safety pin. It is a massive, semicircular piece of woven wool, roughly 18 feet long and 7 feet wide. It is heavy, hot, and impossible to put on by yourself. You need a slave, or at least a very patient family member, to drape it over you. They drape it over your left shoulder, wrap it around your back, under your right arm, across your chest, and over the left shoulder again. It's an elaborate straitjacket of social status. Once it's on, your left arm is essentially useless, burdened by the weight of the fabric, and your right arm has limited range of motion. The toga is designed to prevent you from doing manual labor. It screams to the world, I am a Roman citizen, and I am too important to run, jump, or work. It is dignity in textile form, but it is also a heat trap. In the Roman summer, wearing a toga is like wearing a winter coat in a sauna. You are sweating profoundly within minutes. But let's look closer at that fabric. It's surprisingly white, isn't it? Or at least a creamy off-white brightness that stands out against the mud of the street. How do they get it that clean without bleach or detergents? The answer lies in that faint chemical tang you smelled earlier. That sharp scent isn't coming from a factory, it's coming from your clothes. The Roman dry cleaner is called a fullonica, and the people who work there are the fullones. They are the unsung heroes of Roman fashion, and their job is arguably the worst in the entire empire. Since the Romans don't have soap as we know it, soap is a barbarian invention used by Gauls to dye their hair red. They rely on other chemical agents to cut through grease and dirt. The most effective, abundant, and free source of ammonia is urine. Yes, human urine. As you walk through the city, you might notice large clay jars placed on street corners. These aren't trash cans, they are collection points. Passers-by are encouraged to relieve themselves into these jars to contribute to the local laundry industry. It's an early and very literal form of recycling. The fullones collect this liquid gold, let it sit in vats until it becomes stale, and the urea breaks down into high-potency ammonia, and then they get to work. If you were to peek inside a fullonica, you would see men standing in tubs filled with a mixture of water, fuller's earth, a type of absorbent clay, and stale urine. They are stomping. They tread on the clothes like they are making wine, but instead of crushing grapes, they are stomping the stains out of your tunic using the chemical power of pee. This agitates the fibers and allows the ammonia to whiten the wool. After the stomping, the clothes are rinsed, brushed with hedgehog skins to raise the nap of the wool, and treated with burning sulfur fumes to bleach them further. So, when you see a politician in the forum wearing a toga candida, a specifically chalk-whitened toga that glows in the sun and gives us the word candidate, remember that his pristine appearance is made possible by the collective bladder output of the neighborhood. The irony is palpable. The cleaner you look, the more intimately you are connected to the city's waste. This industry is so lucrative that the Emperor Vespasian famously placed a tax on the collection of urine from public latrines. When his son Titus complained that it was disgusting to tax pee, Vespasian held up a gold coin and asked if it smelled. When Titus said no, Vespasian delivered the punchline that has echoed through history. Pecunia non olet. Money does not stink. Your clothes, however, might. Even after the rinsing and the sulfur treatment, there is often a lingering, subtle odor of the cleaning agent, especially on a damp day. To a Roman, that smell doesn't register as dirty toilet. It registers as freshly laundered. It's the scent of civilization. But to you, a modern time traveler, it's a constant, low-level olfactory assault. You are wrapped in a heavy, scratchy, ammonia-scented cocoon. You adjust the folds of your tunic, trying to air out your skin. The weight of the wool is already pressing down on your shoulders. You haven't even started your day properly, and you are already physically exhausted by your own outfit. You check your belt, the cingulum, to make sure it's cinched tight. In Rome, wearing your tunic loose and unbelted is considered sloppy and effeminate, a sign that you have lost control of your life. You have to keep it high and tight to show you are ready for action, even if the only action you are ready for is a nap. You check your feet. You are wearing bedcalage or simple sandals. Leather straps bind a thick sole to your foot. There are no socks. Socks, udones, do exist, but they are mostly for soldiers in northern climates or people who don't care about fashion. Here in the city, wearing socks with sandals would get you mocked, which is one fashion rule that has surprisingly stayed consistent for 2,000 years. The leather is stiff and hasn't been broken in yet. You can feel a blister forming on your heel. So, here you are, itchy, sweaty, smelling faintly of sulfur and ammonia, with a potential blister brewing and a bladder that is hopefully empty. You look towards the door of the insula. The sun is fully up now. The noise outside has reached a crescendo. You have to get to work, or rather, you have to get to the man who gives you money so you can survive. But between you and your destination lies the Roman street network. And if you think the apartment was dangerous, you have no idea what awaits you on the cobblestones. The morning commute in Rome isn't about traffic jams and podcasts. It's an obstacle course of mud, refuse, and aggressive humanity. You take a deep breath, inhaling the dust of the stairwell, and prepare to descend. You're going to need eyes in the back of your head for this next part. You take a deep breath, brace yourself against the door frame, and step out onto the Roman street. If you were expecting the orderly, paved avenues of a Hollywood set, I have bad news for you. Unless you are on the Via Sacra or right in the Forum, the street beneath your sandals is likely a chaotic mixture of beaten earth, broken cobblestones, and a substance the Romans call lutum. That's the polite word for mud, but in a city of 1 million people, with limited plumbing and thousands of pack animals, lutum is a complex biological hazard. The first thing you notice is the width of the street. It's narrow, shockingly narrow. Roman law dictates that a standard street only needs to be about 15 feet wide, and many alleyways, or angiportus, are barely wide enough for a donkey to squeeze through with its panniers loaded. You are immediately part of a shoulder-to-shoulder crush of humanity. There is no concept of personal space here. In the modern world, if you bump into someone, you apologize. In Rome, you just keep moving. If you stop to apologize, you'll cause a pileup. You look down at your feet. This is where the famous Roman engineering comes in to save your sandals, sort of. You see huge, raised stones placed at intervals across the street. These are stepping stones, designed to let you cross from one sidewalk to the other without stepping into the muck that accumulates in the center of the road. It looks like a real-life game of the floor is lava, except the floor is sewage and animal waste. You hop from one stone to the next, balancing precariously as a stream of murky water flows beneath you. But the danger isn't just below you, it's above you. And this is the part of the commute that makes modern traffic look relaxing. You hear a creak from a window 3 stories up. Your instincts kick in, and you dive toward the wall. Splash. A torrent of liquid lands exactly where you were standing a second ago. Remember those chamber pots we discussed? Well, not everyone wants to carry them down the stairs. Despite strict laws forbidding it, people constantly dump waste out of their windows. The Roman jurist Ulpian actually wrote extensively about the Actio de Effusis Vel Dejectus, a law that allows you to sue for damages if something poured or thrown from a building hits you. It's a fascinating piece of legal history, proving that getting hit by flying trash was a common enough occurrence to require specific legislation. If you're hit, the law says the building's inhabitant owes you double the value of the damage. Of course, good luck figuring out exactly which window in the 7-story tenement released the barrage while you are wiping sludge off your tunic. You hug the walls of the buildings as you walk, thinking it's safer. It isn't. Tiles fall off roofs. Flower pots topple from windowsills. The poet Juvenal famously wrote that you are a fool if you go out to dinner without making your last will and testament first, simply because of the sheer number of falling objects waiting to crack your skull. So, you walk with one eye on the mud and one eye on the sky, a paranoid shuffle that is the signature gait of the true Roman pedestrian. Now, you might be wondering, where are all the chariots? You've seen Ben-Hur, you expect traffic jams of horses, but the streets are oddly devoid of large vehicles. This is due to the Lex Julia Municipalis, a law passed by Julius Caesar himself. He realized the city was too gridlocked, so he banned heavy wagons and chariots from the streets during the first 10 hours of the day. This sounds like a great idea, a pedestrian-friendly city. But nature abhors a vacuum. In the absence of wagons, the streets are filled with everything else. Builders are hauling timber and stone for the endless construction projects, swinging massive beams that threaten to decapitate anyone not paying attention. Butchers are dragging carcasses. Barbers are shaving customers right in the middle of the street because renting a shop is too expensive. Snake charmers, sword swallowers, and beggars are all vying for your attention and your coins. As you push through the throng, you hear a rhythmic shouting behind you. Locum, date, locum, make way, give way. You are shoved violently to the side into a pile of refuse. You spin around, angry, but you freeze. A massive litter, a portable bed with curtains, is being carried by 6 muscular slaves. Flanking them are the anti-ambulones, or before walkers. These are professional bullies hired by the wealthy to clear a path through the crowd. They use their elbows, their fists, and heavy staffs to part the sea of peasants. Through the sheer curtains of the litter, you catch a glimpse of a nobleman reading a scroll, completely oblivious to the chaos his transit is causing. He is reclining on soft cushions, elevated above the mud and the smell. This is the ultimate status symbol. In Rome, power isn't just about how much money you have. It's about how little your feet touch the ground. You, rubbing your bruised arm, are very much on the ground. You merge back into the flow of traffic, trying to find your way. This is harder than it sounds. There are no street signs. There are no house numbers. If you want to find a specific address, the directions are usually something like, go past the Temple of Apollo, Turn left at the bakery that smells like burnt crust, and look for the house with the painting of the big dog on the wall. Historians still argue about how effective the idols, the officials in charge of public maintenance, really were at keeping these streets navigable. We have records of them fining homeowners for not cleaning the street in front of their doors, which suggest a system of responsibility. But we also have endless complaints from writers about the mud, the corpses of dogs left in the road, and the general squalor. It seems that, much like today, municipal services looked great on paper, but struggled in practice. The noise is unrelenting. It's not the mechanical drone of engines we are used to. It's a human roar. Peddlers are singing their wares with specific melodic calls, one tune for hot sausages, another for sulfur matches. Schoolmasters are shouting at their students in open-air classrooms on the street corners. The metal-on-metal clang of a blacksmith rings out from a nearby workshop. It is a sensory assault that never pauses. You trudge onward, your feet heavy. The mud has coated your sandals and is starting to dry into a crust on your ankles. You are only walking a few miles, but it feels like a marathon. You are playing a high-stakes game of dodgeball with humanity, livestock, and waste. And let's not forget the animals. While wagons are banned, donkeys and mules are not. You find yourself stuck behind a mule loaded with amphorae of oil. The beast stops. It decides, right there in the narrow bottleneck of the street, to relieve itself. The crowd groans but flows around it like water around a rock. You have to press yourself against a wall that feels greasy to let the mule handler pass. This is the reality of the glory of Rome. It is a city that attacks you. It demands your total attention just to walk from point A to point B without being crushed, soiled, or scammed. You are exhausted, and you haven't even started your job yet. But you have a destination. You are heading to the Esquiline Hill, the neighborhood of the wealthy. You need to get there before the sun is too high, because if you are late, you won't get paid. You quicken your pace, dodging a slave carrying a tray of pastries and stepping over a puddle of questionable origin. Finally, the crowd begins to thin slightly. The buildings change from rickety wooden towers to solid stone mansions. The air smells a little less like sewage and a little more like wood smoke and expensive perfume. You have survived the commute. You have made it to the land of the rich. But now you have to survive the social humiliation that keeps you fed. You approach a massive set of double doors where a crowd is already gathering. It's time for the salutatio. It's time to beg. You are standing in front of a massive set of oak doors, studded with bronze nails that look big enough to secure a fortress. You are not alone. You are crushed into a small, covered courtyard known as the vestibulum, the waiting area that bridges the gap between the public street and the private sanctity of the home. This is where the word vestibule comes from, but don't picture a cozy mudroom with a coat rack. Picture a holding pen for the desperate. Around you is a sea of white wool. Every man here is wearing a toga. It is mandatory. To appear at the salutatio, the morning greeting, without your toga is a grave insult to the man inside. It would be like showing up to a board meeting in your pajamas. So, despite the heat rising with the sun, everyone is sweating in their heavy drapes, smelling of that familiar mix of anxiety, garlic, and ammonia-cleaned laundry. You are here because you are a client. The man inside is your patronus, your patron. This relationship is the invisible glue that holds the entire Roman Empire together. It's not quite employment, and it's not quite charity. It's a social contract. You give him your loyalty, your vote in the elections, and the visual clout of having a large entourage. In exchange, he gives you legal protection and, most importantly, the sportula. The sportula is why everyone is pushing and shoving. Originally, it was a literal little basket of food, some bread, maybe a bit of meat or cheese to keep your family fed for the day. But by the imperial era you're living in, it has mostly converted into a cash payment. Specifically, 6.25 sesterti. It's not a fortune. It's barely enough to keep you above the poverty line, but without it, you starve. So you wait. And you wait. The doors are still shut. The rich, famously, do not wake up as early as the poor. Inside, your patron is likely enjoying a leisurely breakfast, or perhaps having his hair curled by a slave, while you and 50 other men shift your weight from foot to foot on the hard stone. The boredom is palpable. You listen to the conversations around you. Some men are complaining about the price of oil. Others are gossiping about a gladiator who fell in the arena yesterday. This is a community of professional waiters. Among the crowd, you notice a hierarchy. Not all clients are created equal. Near the front of the line, standing confidently, are the first admission friends. These are men who are technically clients, but are also wealthy enough to look the patron in the eye. They wear better togas. They look cleaner. They will get invited inside for a private chat. You, however, are in the second admission, or perhaps even the third. You are part of the turba, the mob. You are just a number. Finally, after an hour of standing, you hear the heavy scrape of a wooden bar being lifted. The doors groan open. A slave appears. This is not just any slave. This is the ostarius, the doorman. He looks at the crowd with a mixture of boredom and contempt. He holds a staff, and he isn't afraid to use it to keep the line orderly. But the most important person is standing just behind him. This is the nomenclator. In a world without ID cards or facial recognition software, the nomenclator is a human database. His entire job, his sole purpose in life, is to memorize the names and faces of every single person the patron knows. He whispers into the patron's ear, reminding him who you are, so the patron can pretend he actually cares. "This is Marcus," he might whisper. "He has 3 kids and owes you a favor." The line starts to move. It's a slow shuffle. As you cross the threshold, you glance down at the floor. Inset into the mosaic tiles of the entryway is a picture of a snarling black dog with the words "Cave Canem," beware of the dog. It's a common motif in Roman houses, meant to ward off thieves and evil spirits, but right now, it feels like a warning to you: behave, or else. You step into the atrium. It is breathtaking. After the squalor of your apartment and the filth of the street, this room feels like a temple. The ceiling is high and painted in vibrant reds and golds. In the center is a shallow pool of crystal clear water, the impluvium, catching the light from the opening in the roof above. Busts of the patron's ancestors stare down at you from niches in the walls, their stone eyes judging your cheap sandals. But you don't have time to sightsee. The nomenclator spots you. He scans his mental hard drive. For a terrifying second, you think he's forgotten you, which would mean getting kicked out with nothing. But then he nods. He announces your name, loudly, so the patron can hear. You step forward. The patron is there, usually seated on a chair of ivory or inlaid wood, looking impressively bored. He is wearing a toga that is blindingly white, a stark contrast to the dingy yellow wool you are wearing. This is the moment of truth. You have to greet him. Ave patrone, you say. Hail, patron. Historians still argue about the exact level of intimacy involved in this ritual during different eras. In the early Republic, you might have shaken hands or even been embraced. But here in the Empire, the gap between rich and poor has widened into a canyon. You likely just bow your head. If he's feeling particularly arrogant, he might offer you his hand to kiss, or he might just wave you along like a fly. He doesn't ask how you slept. He doesn't ask about your dreams. He just nods. The transaction is complete. You have acknowledged his superiority. He has acknowledged your existence. You are shunted off to the side by a steward who hands you your sportula. You feel the weight of the coins in your hand. It's humiliating, isn't it? Every single morning, you have to perform this play, acting the part of the loyal servant just to buy bread. The Roman poet Martial, who was a client himself and hated it, wrote endless verses complaining about the cruelty of the morning wait, the rudeness of the slaves, and the stinginess of the patrons. He called it the miserable service of the toga. But here's a quirky little secret about the system. You might not be the only one scamming it. Some industrious Romans, known as client runners, would actually sprint from one patron's house to another, trying to collect multiple sportulae in a single morning. It's a dangerous game. If you get caught double dipping, you lose both patrons. But if you pull it off, you might actually make a decent living. There are even stories of people renting litters to look sick or pregnant to get bumped to the front of the line, maximizing their efficiency. You, however, are not that brave. You clutch your 6.25 sestertii tight. You turn to leave, but you don't go back out the front door. That would block the incoming traffic. You are ushered out a side exit, the tradesman's entrance. You are back in the alleyway before you know it. The door slams shut behind you. The glimpse of luxury, the cool water, the art, the clean air is gone. You are back in the mud. You look at the coins. This is it. This is your budget. In the modern world, this would be like waiting in line for 3 hours to receive a $10 bill. It's inefficient, degrading, and exhausting. But in Rome, this is the economy. There is no social safety net, no unemployment office, no pension plan. There is only the patron. Your stomach rumbles loudly, reminding you that you haven't eaten. The stress of the social performance has burned through whatever energy you had left. The coins in your hand are useless unless you convert them into sustenance. You need food, but you can't just pop into a sterile supermarket and grab a sealed sandwich. You have to brave the Roman culinary landscape. And let me tell you, Roman street food is an adventure all on its own. It's salty, It's pungent, and it involves a specific ingredient that you, with your modern palate, might find challenging. You head towards the nearest thermopolium, a food counter opening onto the street. You can smell it before you see it. It smells of fish. Not fresh fish, but fish that has been rotting in the sun for 3 months, liquefied and bottled. It's time for lunch. It's time for garum. You follow your nose towards the thermopolium. In a city that smells of wood smoke, unwashed bodies, and open sewers, the scent wafting from this L-shaped masonry counter is distinct enough to cut through the olfactory noise. It is a sharp, pungent, brine-heavy aroma that hits the back of your throat and stays there. To a modern nose, it smells like a fishing boat that has been left out in the sun for a week. To a Roman nose, it smells like lunch. You step up to the counter. The thermopolium is the ancient ancestor of the fast food joint. Embedded in the stone countertop are large terracotta jars, dolia, keeping the food warm, or at least lukewarm. There are no menus with pictures, no combo meals, and definitely no have it your way. You eat what the ladle serves up. The proprietor, a man with flour-dusted arms and a tunic stained with splashes of dark liquid, looks at you expectantly. You point to a bowl of what looks like lentil stew. He scoops a generous portion into a rough wooden bowl. It looks bland. It's gray, mushy, and uninspiring. But then he reaches for a small cruet, a narrow-necked bottle that contains the magic ingredient. With a flick of his wrist, he dashes a dark, amber liquid over your lentils. The smell intensifies immediately. This is garum. If you want to understand the Roman palate, you have to understand this sauce. It is the ketchup, the soy sauce, the salt, and the MSG of the ancient world all rolled into one. And the way it's made would probably get the health department to shut down the entire empire today. Garum starts with fish, specifically the insides of fish, intestines, gills, blood, mixed with small, whole fish like anchovies. These are thrown into a vat, heavily salted, and then left outside in the blazing Mediterranean sun for months. And I do mean months. The salt prevents the fish from putrefying in a dangerous way, but it encourages enzymatic fermentation. Essentially, the fish digest themselves. They turn from solid matter into a thick, protein-rich sludge. The liquid that is drawn off the top of this fermenting goo is the garum, or liquamen for the higher grades. It is clear, golden brown, and incredibly expensive. The elite pay top dollar for premium Spanish garum, treating it like we treat aged balsamic vinegar. But you don't get the top shelf stuff. You get the dregs. The sediment left at the bottom of the vat, a muddy paste called alec, is what usually flavors the food of the poor. It's gritty, it's intense, and it's very, very salty. You take your bowl and retreat to a corner. There are no tables here. Thermopolia are standing room only. You are rubbing elbows with slaves, soldiers, and other laborers. You dip a piece of hard, coarse bread into the stew and take a bite. Your mouth is instantly flooded with umami. It's savory, deep, and complex. If you can get past the mental image of the liquefying fish guts, it's actually delicious. It transforms the boring lentils into something rich and meaty. It's the secret weapon of Roman cuisine because, let's be honest, most of the staple crops, barley, wheat, lentils, are incredibly dull on their own. Garum is the life support system for the Roman diet. It's everywhere. They put it in soups, they put it on roasted meats, they mix it with wine, oinogarum, with vinegar, oxygarum, and with water, hydrogarum. Historians still argue whether garum was also used in desserts. We have recipes, specifically from the famous cookbook attributed to Apicius, that seem to call for garum in sweet custards and pear soufflés. Some scholars think this is a mistranslation or a scribal error. Others argue that the saltiness would have acted like sea salt in caramel, enhancing the sweetness. Imagine a fish sauce creme brulee. It's a bold choice, to say the least. As you eat, you try not to think about the fact that tapeworms are a very real and present danger in this society. The fermentation process should kill most parasites, but quality control in a back alley garum factory is not exactly ISO 9001 certified. You chew carefully. A fun, quirky tidbit about this sauce is that it was so essential to daily life that there was even a kosher version. The Jewish population in the empire, which was significant, couldn't eat standard garum because it might contain shellfish or non-kosher fish mixed in. So, manufacturers created garum castum, chaste or pure garum, made exclusively with scales on fish to tap into that market demographic. It's a wonderful example of ancient capitalism finding a way. You finish the lentils, scraping the bowl with your bread to get every last drop of the salty sludge. Now you're thirsty. The salt load from the garum is significant. You look back at the counter. The proprietor is mixing a drink for another customer. He's pouring cheap, sour wine into a cup and diluting it heavily with water. You order a cup. It's called Pascha. It's essentially vinegar, water, and maybe some herbs if you're lucky. It was the Gatorade of the Roman army, cheap, hydrating, and the acidity helped kill off some of the bacteria in the water. You take a sip. It makes your lips pucker. It's sharp and refreshing in a primitive way, cutting through the lingering fishy aftertaste of the lentils. Looking around the thermopolium, you see a slice of Roman life that is rarely captured in the marble statues. You see a man gambling with dice in the corner, hiding his throws from the owner. You see graffiti scratched into the plaster wall. We two dear men, friends forever, were here. If you want to know our names, they are Gaius and Aulus. It's a poignant reminder that people have always just wanted to say, I was here, I existed, I had lunch. But as the meal settles in your stomach, you start to feel the heaviness of the day. The heat is oppressive now. It's early afternoon, the time of day when the Mediterranean sun feels like a physical weight pressing down on the city. The noise, the dust, the salt, the wool, it's all becoming too much. You feel sticky. You feel grime coated in sweat, coated in more grime. You need to escape. You need to wash off the layer of Rome that has accumulated on your skin. And luckily, the Romans have an obsession with bathing that borders on the religious. You finish your Pascha, wipe your mouth with the back of your hand, and step back out into the glare. You are heading to the thermae, the public baths. You might think this sounds relaxing. You're picturing a spa day, cucumber water, soft robes, Enya playing in the background. Erase that image immediately. The Roman bathhouse is not a spa. It is a loud, chaotic, slippery, and socially aggressive environment. It is a gym, a community center, a brothel, and a business exchange, all wrapped into one steamy package. And because you are poor, you aren't going to a primate, serene bath. You are going to the massive imperial baths, where thousands of naked strangers are currently sweating, scraping, and splashing together. You clutch your few remaining coins. The entrance fee is cheap, usually just a quadrans, the smallest Roman coin, but the real cost is your dignity and your personal belongings. You check your belt to make sure your money is secure, though secure is a relative term in the baths. You navigate through the crowds, the towering brick arches of the bath complex rising above the tenements like a mountain range. Prepare yourself. You are about to enter a world of extreme temperatures, heavy oil, and the most dangerous thief in the empire, the clothes snatcher. You stand before the monumental entrance of the Thermae. If the insula was a monument to poverty, this building is a cathedral to the body. It is massive. We are talking about a complex that covers acres, clad in marble, decorated with statues that would belong in the Louvre today, and powered by a furnace system that consumes entire forests. It is the social heart of Rome. It is where you go to get clean, get fit, get laid, or get a job. And right now, as you step through the arches, you are just hoping to get out without being robbed. You enter the apoditerium, the changing room. The first thing that hits you is the smell. It's a locker room, after all. It smells of unwashed feet, damp wool, and stale sweat, amplified by the humidity. The walls are lined with cubbyholes, niches in the stone that sit high above the benches. These are the lockers. You'll notice a distinct lack of padlocks, combination dials, or biometric scanners. This brings us to the most stressful part of the Roman bath experience: clothes security. In a city where a good tunic is worth a month's wages, the bathhouse is a shopping mall for thieves. These thieves, known as fures balnearii, are so common that Roman law has a specific category for them. If you steal from a house, it's theft. If you steal from a bathhouse, it's a capital offense often punishable by hard labor in the mines. The severity of the punishment tells you just how rampant the crime is. You have a choice. You can leave your clothes in a cubby and pray to Mercury, the god of thieves, ironically, that they are still there when you return. Or, if you have a spare coin, you can hire a capsarius, a slave whose sole job is to sit on a bench and watch your pile of fabric. But can you trust him? Is he working with the thieves? You look at a teenager dozing off near the door, toss him a coin, and hope for the best. You strip off your scratchy wool tunic, your sandals, and your belt. You are now naked, just like everyone else, senators, soldiers, and shopkeepers alike. Well, mostly naked. You might keep your sandals on. The floors in the heated rooms are hot enough to blister your soles, so unless you have calluses like leather, you clatter along in your wooden-soled clogs. You move into the palestra, the exercise yard. It's an open-air courtyard surrounded by colonnades. This is where the gym bros of antiquity hang out. Men are lifting lead weights, grunting loudly with every rep to ensure everyone notices their effort. Others are wrestling in the dust. A group is playing harpastum, a violent ball game that looks like a mix of rugby and mixed martial arts. You dodge a flying medicine ball and a sweaty body that crashes into the wall next to you. The noise is incredible. If you think your local gym is loud with its techno music and dropping weights, listen to the complaint of Seneca, the philosopher who had the misfortune of living right above a bathhouse. He wrote a letter describing the auditory torture. I hear the grunt of the muscle man exercising and swinging lead weights. I hear the slap of a hand on shoulders, the rhythmic shouts of the scorekeeper. But there is a specific sound that chills your blood. A high-pitched, sudden shriek of pain. You look over to a corner and see a man lying on a slab, while another man leans over him with tweezers. This is the Ellipolus, the hair plucker. Romans, particularly wealthy ones, valued smooth skin. Underarm hair is considered uncivilized. So, this specialist is ripping out hair, follicle by follicle, from the armpits of a screaming client. Seneca noted that the hair plucker often had a shrill voice himself, which he used to advertise his services, only stopping when he was making his customer yell instead. You decide to skip the waxing and the wrestling and head for the cleaning. You find a spot on a marble bench. A slave, or you, if you brought your own oil flask, pours olive oil into your hand. Remember, there is no soap, no foaming lather, just thick golden green oil. You slather it over your entire body. You are now a greased piglet. The oil mixes with the dirt, the sweat, and the city grime on your skin to form a kind of sludge. Now comes the strigil. This is a curved metal tool, usually made of bronze or iron, that looks like a dull sickle. You press the edge against your skin and scrape. You scrape long, firm strokes down your arms, your chest, your legs. The oil and dirt accumulate on the blade like gray butter. You flick the goo onto the floor. Here is a quirky and slightly nauseating tidbit for you. That goo, that mixture of sweat, oil, and dead skin scraped from the bodies of athletes, is called gloios. And people buy it. It was collected and sold as a medicinal ointment. Pliny the Elder, who cataloged every weird fact in the ancient world, mentions it as a treatment for inflammation, joint pain, and even genital warts. So, as you scrape yourself clean, you are technically manufacturing pharmaceuticals. Once you are scraped clean, you begin the thermal circuit. You move into the tepidarium, the warm room. The air is misty and pleasant. You sit here for a while, letting your pores open, your body adjusting to the heat. It's the only relatively quiet room in the complex, a transitional space where people whisper and recover. Then you brave the caldarium, the hot room. The heat hits you like a physical blow. The humidity is near 100%. The floor is roasting hot, heated by the hypocaust system beneath your feet. This is a marvel of engineering. Furnaces in the basement channel hot air through hollow spaces under the floor and inside the walls. It's radiant heating on an industrial scale. You gasp for breath in the steam. You sit on a hot bench, sweating profusely, listening to the water dripping from the vaulted ceiling. Historians still argue about the gender dynamics of these spaces. For a long time, it was believed men and women bathed separately, either in different wings or at different times, women in the morning, men in the afternoon. But there is considerable evidence, imperial edicts banning mixed bathing, that suggests mixed bathing was happening frequently enough that emperors had to keep trying to stop it. If you are in a mixed bath during the reign of a permissive emperor, the atmosphere is even more charged, a steamy, slippery singles mixer where the "what are you wearing" question is moot. Finally, when you can't take the heat anymore, you sprint to the frigidarium. This is the cold room, home to a massive, unheated pool. You plunge in. The shock is immediate. Your heart hammers against your ribs. The cold water seals your pores and wakes you up. But as you paddle around the pool, take a close look at the water. There is no chlorine. There are no pool filters. This water is shared by hundreds, maybe thousands of people a day. People who have open sores, people who are sick, people who have just scraped the grime off their bodies. The water is murky, oily, and teeming with invisible life. The physician Celsus warned that going to the baths with a fresh wound was a death sentence, a guaranteed way to get gangrene. And let's not forget the accidents. Without modern plumbing standards, the water in the baths is not always pristine. You try to keep your mouth firmly shut. You float, looking up at the magnificent vaulted ceiling, realizing that you are soaking in a lukewarm bacterial soup. You climb out, dripping and shivering. You towel off with your rough linen cloth. You head back to the apoditerium, your heart racing as you approach your cubbyhole. Miraculously, your tunic is still there. The teenager is asleep, but the gods were watching. You dress quickly, checking your money pouch. It's lighter. You didn't get robbed, but you did buy a sausage from a snack vendor wandering through the locker room and maybe a cup of wine. You step back out into the street. You are cleaner than you were, but your skin is red from the scraping and the heat. You feel lightheaded. Maybe it was the sudden temperature change. Maybe it was the fumes from the furnace. Or maybe, just maybe, that sausage wasn't quite cooked through. You feel a twinge in your stomach. Not the hunger pangs from earlier, but something sharper. A cramp. You ignore it at first, but it comes back, twisting your gut. You realize, with a sinking feeling, that the Roman health system is your next destination. And if you thought the sponge on a stick was bad, wait until you see what the doctor wants to do to you. You are doubled over in a narrow alleyway, clutching your stomach. The sharp pain that started in the baths has graduated into a full-blown rebellion. In the modern world, you'd pop an antacid, or maybe text a friend to bring you some ginger ale. In ancient Rome, you are about to enter a world where medicine is less science and more guesswork with a side of magic. You stumble toward the office of a medicus. You spot a sign, a relief carving of a cupping vessel and a scalpel. This is it. You walk inside. The room is dimly lit and smells of dried herbs, metallic blood, and something burnt. The doctor, a Greek man, most doctors in Rome are Greek, often slaves or freedmen, looks you over with a critical eye. He doesn't ask for your insurance card. He asks for your symptoms and your horoscope. Welcome to Roman healthcare. It's a terrifying mix of surprisingly advanced surgery and utterly baffling home remedies. The Romans are masters of plumbing and architecture, but when it comes to the human body, they are still figuring things out. They believe health is a balance of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Your stomach cramp? That's clearly an imbalance. The doctor suggests a treatment. You brace yourself for something like, take this pill. Instead, he hands you a bowl of boiled cabbage. Yes, cabbage. If there is one vegetable the Romans are obsessed with, it is the humble brassica. Cato the Elder, a stern Roman statesman who hated everything foreign, especially Greek doctors, wrote an entire treatise on why you don't need doctors if you just eat enough cabbage. He claimed it cured everything: headaches, vision problems, digestive issues, and even serious wounds. If there is any bruise, it will break it up and heal it, he wrote. He even suggested using the urine of a person who has eaten cabbage as a secondary medicine. So, if the cabbage doesn't work, maybe the cabbage-infused pea will. You politely decline the urine therapy and choke down the boiled leaves. The doctor watches you, nodding sagely. If the cabbage fails, he has a backup plan: goat dung. I wish I were joking. Pliny the Elder, our favorite encyclopedist of the bazaar, recorded that goat dung, boiled in vinegar, there's that vinegar again, was excellent for stopping bleeding or curing snake bites. For stomach pains, perhaps a poultice of dung applied to the abdomen. You look at the doctor's hands and decide the cabbage was actually delicious. But let's say your condition was worse. Let's say you had a toothache. In Rome, dentistry is a house of horrors. There is no Novocaine. If a tooth needs to come out, it's getting yanked with iron forceps while you are held down by 3 strong assistants. To prevent the pain, they might suggest putting a mixture of earthworms and crushed spider eggs into the cavity. Or, for the truly desperate, touching the tooth with a dead man's tooth. Historians still argue about the effectiveness of some of these ancient remedies. We laugh at the dung and the worms, but the Romans also used willow bark, which contains salicylic acid, the active ingredient in aspirin, for pain, and honey, a natural antibacterial for wounds. They were stumbling in the dark, but occasionally they bumped into something that actually worked. However, the cure you are most afraid of is surgery. You glance at the doctor's table. It is lined with tools that look like they belong in a torture chamber: bronze scalpels, bone saws, hooks for extracting arrowheads, and catheters that look far too wide for comfort. Getty Images. Camfa. If you need surgery, you are going to be awake for it. The best anesthetic they have is opium or mandrake root, which might make you hallucinations or just knock you out entirely if the dosage is wrong. But mostly, you just get a piece of leather to bite down on. The speed of the surgeon is the most critical factor. A good surgeon is a fast surgeon. You want the guy who can amputate a leg in 2 minutes, not the perfectionist who takes his time. You realize your stomach ache is fading, probably out of sheer terror at the alternatives. You thank the doctor, pay him a few coins, and back out of the room before he can suggest bleeding you. Bloodletting is the go-to solution for almost everything. Got a fever? Too much blood. Got a headache? Too much blood. Feeling sad? Definitely too much blood. They would slice a vein in your arm or attach heated glass cups to your back to suction it out. As you walk away, feeling slightly better but significantly more wary, you pass a temple to Aesculapius, the god of healing. The temple is crowded. People are sleeping on the floor in the porticos. This is called incubation. You go to the temple, sleep there, and hope the god visits you in a dream to tell you how to cure your illness. In the morning, you tell your dream to a priest, and he interprets it. You dreamt of a dog. The god says you need to lick your wound. It's essentially healthcare by dream journal. You shake your head. You've survived the morning, the commute, the patron, the bath, and the doctor. But the day isn't over. In fact, the main event is just beginning. You hear a roar in the distance. Not the roar of the crowd in the street, but a unified, thunderous sound coming from the massive stone oval in the center of the city. The Colosseum is calling. Now you might think, finally, the gladiator games, the excitement, and sure, it's the Super Bowl of the ancient world. But remember, you are poor. You don't have a VIP box. You are heading to the nosebleed section, literally, the wooden bleachers at the very top of the arena, so high up that the gladiators look like ants. You join the massive stream of people heading toward the Flavian amphitheater. The crowd is dense, excited, and aggressive. Ticket scalpers are shouting. Yes, they existed. People are pushing. You clutch a small clay token, your tessera, which has your entrance gate and seat number stamped on it. You squeeze through the vomitoria. The passageway is designed to spew people into their seats rapidly. You climb and climb and climb. The stairs are steep and your legs are burning. Finally, you reach the top tier, the Menianum Summum in Lignis. This is the wooden gallery reserved for the poorest men and, surprisingly, women. The Emperor Augustus, in his quest for moral order, banished women to the back rows, presumably so they wouldn't get too excited by the sweaty men killing each other down below. You find a sliver of space on a hard wooden bench. The view is distant, but the atmosphere is electric. 50,000 people are screaming. The noise bounces off the travertine stone and hits you in the chest. But it's not just the sound, it's the smell. You are packed in tight with thousands of people who have been sweating in the sun all day. There is the metallic scent of blood drifting up from the sand. There is the smell of saffron water, which is sprayed over the crowd by hidden pipes to cool them down and mask the stench, but it only creates a weird, perfumed humidity. And then there is the sun, the velarium, the massive canvas awning that sailors rig over the arena to provide shade, doesn't quite reach your cheap seats. You are baking. You are thirsty. You are surrounded by people betting, shouting, and eating chickpeas. You look down at the sand. Two tiny figures are circling each other. One has a net and a trident, the retiarius. The other has a shield and a sword, the secutor. It's life and death down there, but up here, it feels strangely detached. It's like watching a violent video game with the volume turned up to maximum. But the games aren't just about fighting. They are about waiting, There are long lulls between bouts. There are boring executions of criminals during the lunch break, which grimly serves as the halftime show. You sit there for hours, your legs cramping, your skin burning, trapped in a hive mind of bloodlust. This is the reality of Roman entertainment. It's an endurance sport for the audience. You aren't just a spectator, you are a survivor of the event itself. And as the sun begins to dip lower, casting long shadows across the blood-soaked sand, you realize that one wrong move in this city, one unpaid debt, one misunderstood insult, could see you down there on the sand instead of up here on the bench. Which brings us to your next terrifying hurdle, the law. Because in Rome, justice is blind, but it's also easily bribed, incredibly complicated, and terrifyingly swift. You shift your weight on the hard wooden plank, trying to find a patch of skin that isn't glued to your neighbor by sweat. You have been sitting here for hours. In the movies, the Colosseum scenes are a fast-paced montage of sword clashes and roaring tigers. In reality, a day at the games is a test of endurance that rivals a transatlantic flight in economy class, but with more blood and fewer bathrooms. The schedule of the games is rigid. If you arrived at dawn, which you did, because seats are first come, first served in the cheap section, you sat through the Venations, the beast hunts. Now, this sounds exciting. Lions, elephants, bears. And for the first 20 minutes it is. Seeing a giraffe for the first time is mind-blowing for a Roman citizen who has never left Italy. But after the 5th hour of watching animals get slaughtered from a distance of 300 feet, the novelty wears off. The sheer scale of the carnage is numbing. When the Colosseum first opened in 80 AD, the Emperor Titus slaughtered 9,000 animals in 100 days. That's not a typo. The logistics of this are staggering. You are watching a mass extinction event set to music. The air is thick with the smell of sawdust, which is constantly being thrown onto the arena floor to soak up the blood, yet the copper scent lingers, mixing with the smell of the unwashed crowd to create a unique perfume we can call eau de trauma. Then came the lunch break. This is the Meridiani, the midday games. Most of the wealthy patrons down in the marble seats leave to get a nice lunch or take a nap. You, however, are stuck here because if you move, you lose your spot. So you sit and eat your chickpeas while watching the halftime show. This is the darkest part of the Roman day. The Meridiani are public executions. But the Romans, being Romans, can't just hang someone and be done with it. They have to make it theatrical. You watch as condemned criminals, Noxi, are pushed onto the sand. They are unarmed. They might be forced to act out myths. Oh look, that guy is dressed like Orpheus, which means those bears are about to tear him apart. It's a gruesome, humiliating spectacle designed to remind you exactly what happens when you break the Pax Romana. Historians still argue about whether Christians were specifically targeted in these midday shows as often as church tradition suggests. While there were certainly persecutions, the average day at the arena was an equal opportunity meat grinder for anyone who crossed the state, arsonists, traitors, and runaway slaves. You watch, chewing your bread, feeling a strange detachment. This is state-sponsored horror, normalized to the point of boredom. Finally, the main event begins. The sun is lower now, blazing directly into your eyes. The crowd wakes up. The musicians, playing trumpets, horns, and water organs, strike up a dramatic fanfare. The gladiators enter. This is who you came for. These are the rock stars of the empire. They march in wearing helmets that shine in the sun, their armor polished to a mirror finish. But here is where Hollywood lied to you. They probably don't stop in front of the emperor's box and shout, Ave Caesar, morituri te salutant. Hail Caesar, those who are about to die salute you. The Roman historian Suetonius mentions this phrase only once, spoken by a group of condemned prisoners during a mock sea battle, and the emperor Claudius allegedly replied, or not, which confused everyone. It wasn't a standard catchphrase. It was a one-time awkward interaction that history turned into a legend. The fighting starts. It's not a free-for-all. It's highly technical. There are referees, sumarutas, dressed in white tunics, holding long sticks to separate the fighters if rules are broken. You are watching a sport with strict regulations, weight classes, and fighting styles. A retiarius, netman, tries to snare a secutor, pursuer. The crowd is screaming advice, betting slips are changing hands, and you find yourself swept up in the adrenaline. But notice the bodies. Gladiators are not the rippling bodybuilders of modern cinema. They are thick, covered in a layer of subcutaneous fat. They eat a diet heavy in barley and beans. They are often called hordeari, or barley men. That layer of fat is functional armor. It protects shallow nerves and blood vessels from surface cuts, allowing the show to go on even after a slice. Suddenly, a fighter goes down. He raises a finger, the sign of submission. The victor looks to the editor of the games, usually the emperor or a high magistrate, who then looks to the crowd. This is your moment of power. You, the poor, the unwashed, the hungry, get to decide the fate of a man's life. You look around. Everyone is making a gesture with their thumb. But are they pointing it down? Probably not. The thumbs down for death is likely a modern invention popularized by a 19th century painting by Jean-Léon Gérôme. In reality, the gesture for death is likely the police verso, the turned thumb, which might mean pointing the thumb toward the chest, mimicking a stabbing motion, or perhaps thumb up toward the throat. The gesture for mercy is police compresso, keeping the thumb pressed hidden inside the fist, symbolizing a sheathed sword. Whatever the gesture, the verdict is delivered. If it's death, it's swift. If it's mercy, the loser lives to fight another day. The bodies are dragged out through the Porta Libidinensis, the gate of Libitina, goddess of funerals. Men dressed as Charon, the ferryman of the underworld, and Mercury hit the bodies with hammers and poke them with hot irons to ensure they aren't faking. As the games wind down, the commercialism kicks in. If you had money, you could buy a souvenir. A clay lamp depicting your favorite fighter, a glass cup with their stats etched into it. Or, for the truly obsessed, a vial of gladiator sweat and dirt, gloios, scraped from their skin. Roman women and men pay a fortune for this stuff, mixing it into face creams or using it as an aphrodisiac. It's the ancient equivalent of buying a game-worn jersey, but infinitely grosser. You stand up to leave, your legs are numb, you are dehydrated, sunburned, and your ears are ringing. You shuffle toward the exits, the vomitoria. The Roman architects designed these corridors perfectly. The entire stadium of 50,000 people can empty in minutes. You are spewed out back into the city streets. The adrenaline fades, replaced by a creeping anxiety. You just watched what happens to people who fall afoul of the system. The execution of the Noxii at lunchtime replays in your mind. It's a sobering reminder that in Rome, the line between citizen and victim is terrifyingly thin. You don't have to be a murderer to end up in trouble. You just have to owe the wrong person money, or insult a magistrate, or be in the wrong place at the wrong time. You walk through the darkening streets, clutching your tunic. You realize that while the arena was a simulation of violence, the real danger is the legal system that feeds it. Roman law is famous for being the foundation of modern justice, but for a person like you, it is a labyrinth of traps. There are no police officers to call for help. There are no public prosecutors to take your case. If someone wrongs you, you have to drag them to court yourself. And if you wrong someone rich, well, you might just find yourself sold into slavery before the sun sets tomorrow. You see a group of men arguing near a tavern. One points a finger at the other and shouts, "Injus vocote, I call you to court." The other man looks terrified. You hurry past, head down. You need to understand the rules of this game before you become a pawn in it. You hurry away from the shouting men, your sandals slapping against the stones. That phrase you heard, "injus vocote," is effectively a curse. In our world, getting sued is a paperwork headache involving registered mail and lawyers in suits. In Rome, it is a physical altercation. Because there is no police force to serve a subpoena, the plaintiff, the person suing, has to personally find the defendant and drag them to the praetor's tribunal. If the defendant refuses to go, the plaintiff is legally allowed to shout, "Witness this," and then grab them by the neck and haul them through the streets by force. You clutch your tunic, trying to look invisible. You are terrified of the law, and you should be. You are walking toward the Roman Forum, the beating heart of the empire's legal system. It's a magnificent square, flanked by basilicas and temples, filled with statues of great men. But for a person in your tax bracket, it is a minefield of potential ruin. In the center of this legal universe stand the 12 tables. These are bronze tablets, originally wood, then bronze. Though the originals were destroyed by Gauls centuries ago, the text remains. That list the fundamental laws of Rome. Every schoolboy has to memorize them. They are the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Penal Code all rolled into one, and they are surprisingly specific about things you wouldn't expect. For example, Table 8 has a very peculiar obsession with evil incantations. It essentially says that if you sing a song that slanders another person, you can be clubbed to death. So, that catchy little rhyme you made up about your landlord's bad breath, that's a capital offense. It's a harsh reminder that in a culture beset with dignitas, reputation, words are considered as dangerous as knives. You slip into the back of a crowd gathered at the Basilica Julia. A trial is in progress. This isn't the quiet, wood-paneled courtroom you see on TV. It's a spectator sport, almost as rowdy as the gladiator games you just left. The crowd is hooting, cheering, and booing. The lawyers, or orators, are strutting back and forth, their togas arranged in artful folds. They aren't just arguing facts, they are putting on a one-man show. They cry, they tear their clothes, they bring in the weeping children of the accused to stand there and look sad. Cicero, the greatest lawyer of them all, was a master of this emotional manipulation. He once won a case simply by pointing out how handsome and athletic his client was, effectively arguing, "Look at this jawline. Could a man this beautiful commit murder?" The jury agreed he could not. But there is a limit to the theatrics. You notice a device sitting on a nearby table. It looks like a clay pot dripping water into a bowl. This is the clepsydra, a water clock. It measures the time allowed for each speaker. When the water runs out, you shut up. It's the ancient equivalent of the wrap it up music at the Oscars. If a lawyer is particularly boring, the judge might allow the water to drip faster, or if the case is important, they might add more water. Giving water is a Roman idiom for giving someone more time to speak. The case you are watching involves a dispute over a boundary stone. It seems incredibly dull, literally boring history, but the stakes are high. Removing a boundary stone is a crime against the gods, specifically the god Terminus, and is punishable by death or a massive fine. You watch the accused man sweating. He knows that if he loses, he doesn't just pay a fee, he gets destroyed. And this brings us to the thing that keeps you awake at night: debt. In the modern world, if you go broke, you declare bankruptcy. Your credit score tanks, but you stay free. In Rome, your body but is the collateral. If you owe money and can't pay, you enter a state called nexum. You are essentially handed over to your creditor. He can chain you up in his private prison, many rich houses have them, feed you bread and water, and make you work off the debt. You are technically still a citizen, but in reality, you are a slave until the money is repaid. But it gets darker. Let's look at Table 3 of those famous laws. It outlines exactly what happens if a debtor has multiple creditors and still can't pay after 60 days of imprisonment. The text says the creditors may cut him into parts, partis secanto. Historians still argue whether this law was a literal instruction to chop the debtor into bloody pieces proportional to the debt owed, or if it was a metaphorical phrase meaning they should split the proceeds of selling him into slavery. Most scholars lean toward the metaphorical interpretation because we don't have records of people actually being butchered in the forum for owing back taxes. However, the fact that the language is so ambiguous and so violent tells you everything you need to know about how Rome views poverty. Being poor isn't just unfortunate, it's a moral failing punishable by bodily harm. You shudder and back away from the basilica. The rhetoric of the lawyers is impressive, but the reality is terrifying. Justice in Rome is expensive. To even get a trial, you often have to pay a deposit. To get a good lawyer, you need connections. Remember the patron system? If you are a little guy, the system is designed to chew you up. As you navigate through the forum, You see a man touching the earlobe of another man. This is a ritual called antistari. The first man is summoning the second to be a witness in court. By touching the ear, which Romans believe is the seat of memory, he is ritually binding the man to remember what he sees. It's a quirky little gesture, a mix of legal procedure and superstition. Remember this, the touch says. Do not forget. You cover your own ears instinctively. You don't want to be a witness. You don't want to be a plaintiff. You just want to go home. But home is a long walk away, and the sun is setting. As the shadows lengthen across the forum, stretching out from the temple of Saturn, the mood of the city shifts. The business of the day is done. The lawyers are packing up their scrolls. The bankers are locking their strong boxes. The legal machinery is powering down, but the danger isn't over. You realize that while the law of the 12 tables can hurt you, there are other invisible laws governing your life that are even more strict. You've spent the whole day worrying about soldiers, thieves, and judges. But what about the spirits? What about the gods who live in your doorframe, your cupboard, and your hearth? You have neglected them all day. You didn't say the right prayer when you crossed the threshold this morning. You didn't drop a piece of food for the ghosts at lunch. In Rome, the line between religion and keeping the universe from imploding is non-existent. You are walking through a world thick with invisible entities, all of whom are easily offended and capable of ruining your life. You feel a sudden chilbafal that has nothing to do with the evening air. You need to get back to your insula, not just to sleep, but to perform the rituals that keep the chaos at bay. You need to appease the Lares and the Penates. You need to make sure the gods are on your side, because after seeing the courts, you know for a fact that the law is not. You quicken your pace, dodging a cart that is technically allowed on the streets now that the sun is setting. The heavy wheels grind against the stone, a sound like a low growl. You are a tiny speck in a giant, indifferent machine of stone and law. But you have your own small defenses. You have your superstitions. You have your household gods. And tonight, you are going to need them. You trudged back up the 6 flights of stairs to your apartment, your legs burning from the climb that feels significantly longer now than it did this morning. The sun has dipped below the horizon, and the insula is plunging into gloom. You fumble for your door latch, but before you step inside, you pause. You look down at your feet. You carefully, deliberately lift your right foot and place it over the threshold first. Do not, under any circumstances, step with your left foot, and do not trip. If you trip on the threshold, you might as well turn around, go back downstairs, and sleep in the street, because you have just announced to the universe that your household is vulnerable. In Rome, the boundary between outside and inside is a magical barrier. It is the line of defense against the chaotic, dangerous spirits of the world. Crossing it is a ritual act. You step inside, right foot first, and close the door. You are safe. Or are you? You see, you are never truly alone in a Roman home. You might be the only human in the room, but the space is crowded with invisible roommates. Every object, every corner, every action has a spirit attached to it. We call this animism, but to you, It's just the reality of how things work. The world is alive, and it is watching you. You move immediately to the most important feature of your cramped apartment, the lararium. In a wealthy house, this would be a beautiful mini temple made of marble set in the atrium. In your garret, it is a modest wooden shelf nailed to the wall near the hearth or your brazier. On it stand small figurines made of wood, clay, or bronze. These are the layers. The lares are the guardian spirits of the family and the location. They are often depicted as dancing youths holding drinking horns, looking cheerful. They are the spiritual bouncers of your home. If you treat them well, they keep the fire from burning down the apartment and the thieves from picking the lock. If you ignore them, well, let's just say that structural collapse we worried about in Section 1 becomes a lot more likely. Next to the lares are the penates. These are the gods of the pantry. They watch over your food supply. If you open your jar and find the grain has gone moldy or the oil has turned rancid, it's not just bad luck. It's a theological failure. You have offended the penates. You are tired, you are hungry, you still have the smell of the gladiator games in your nose, but you cannot eat until you feed them. You take a pinch of salt and a small piece of spelt cake, a dry, hard biscuit, and toss them into the flames of your brazier. You might also pour a few drops of wine, if you can spare it, onto the floor. Accept this, you mutter. It's not a grand prayer. It's a transaction. Do ut des. I give, so that you may give. You give them a crumb. They give you another day of not dying from dysentery. It's the same logic as the patron-client system you navigated this morning, just with invisible entities. You look closer at the lararium. Painted on the wall behind the figurines is a picture of a snake. In the modern world, finding a snake in your kitchen is a call animal control emergency. In Rome, the snake is a symbol of the genius, the generative, protective spirit of the male head of the household, the paterfamilias. It represents virility and life force. If a real snake were to slither into your room, you wouldn't kill it. You'd probably give it a saucer of milk and feel incredibly lucky. But the spiritual bureaucracy doesn't stop at the shrine. The Romans have micromanaged the divine to an obsessive degree. There is a specific god for almost every single noun and verb in your life. These are the indigitamenta, the lists of names. Consider your door. It's not just a door, it is the domain of 3 separate deities. Forculus is the god of the door itself. Cardia is the goddess of the hinges. Limentinus is the god of the threshold. You can't just slam the door. You might offend Cardia. You have to respect the hinge. And it gets more specific. Historians still argue whether the Romans genuinely worshipped all these minor gods as distinct personalities or if they were just priestly inventions to categorize the functions of the divine. Did the average Roman really offer a prayer to Sterquilinus, the god of manure, every time they fertilized a field? Or was it just a way of acknowledging that manure is important? Regardless of the theology, the practical effect on you is a constant, low-level anxiety. Did you acknowledge Robigus, the god of mildew, so your bread doesn't spoil? Did you thank Cloacina, the goddess of the sewer, for the fact that the latrine didn't explode today? There is even a debate about a god named Crepitus, the alleged god of flatulence. While modern internet culture loves this idea, most serious scholars believe Crepitus was a satirical invention by later Christian writers to mock pagan beliefs. But the fact that it's even plausible tells you everything about the Roman mindset. If it happens, there's a spirit responsible for it. This religious duty falls squarely on you. As the resident of this room, you are the high priest of your domestic cult. There is no separation between church and state or church and home. You are performing the rites. You are wearing a metaphorical toga of priesthood, even as you stand there in your underwear. You finish the offering. The flame flares up, consuming the salt. You feel a sense of relief. The contract is renewed for another 24 hours. You can now attend to your own needs without fear of a supernatural backlash. But there is one more ritual you have to navigate, and it's a purely social one. You have been invited to dinner. Now, don't get too excited. You aren't going to a fancy banquet at a senator's villa, unless you are very lucky or very funny. You are going to a cenula, a small dinner with friends, or perhaps a slightly better off acquaintance. Dining in Rome is not just about nutrition, it is a minefield of etiquette. You check your appearance in a polished bronze disc that serves as a mirror. You look a bit rough. The bath helped, but the city has a way of sticking to you. You grab your own napkin, a mappa, and tuck it into your belt. Yes, bring your own napkin. This is standard practice. You will use it to wipe your mouth, but its primary function is actually as a to-go bag. It is socially acceptable to wrap up leftovers from the dinner table to take home for later. In fact, if the host is generous, he expects it. You blow out the lamp. Oil is expensive, remember? And step back out into the hallway. The insula is quieter now, the cooking fires of 100 families filling the stairwell with smoke. You descend the stairs again, careful of the loose board on the 3rd floor, surely the work of a mischievous sprite you forgot to appease. You are heading to the apartment of a friend who lives on the ground floor. This is a step up in the world. Stone floors, thicker walls, maybe even a small garden in the back. As you walk, you think about the day you've had. The mud, the sponge, the patron, the fish sauce, the blood sport, the lawyers. It has been a relentless assault on your senses and your dignity. But here, in the evening, there is a promise of something better. The cena, the main meal of the day, is the reward for surviving. But as you know by now, nothing in Rome is simple. Even the act of sitting down to eat is physically demanding. We don't sit at the table. That's for children and slaves. We recline, and we don't just lounge on a sofa watching Netflix. We recline in a very specific, geometrically complex formation that requires core strength and a strong left elbow. You arrive at your friend's door. You knock, carefully, respecting Forculus. The door opens. The smell of roasted pork and spiced wine hits you. It's the best thing you've smelled all day. You step inside, ready to relax. But as you look at the arrangement of the couches, the triclinium, you realize that where you sit determines your worth as a human being, and you are about to be put in your place. You step into the dining room, the triclinium. If you are expecting a table with chairs, you are in for a rude orthopedic awakening. The room is dominated by 3 large couches arranged in a U shape around a central low table. This arrangement is the defining feature of Roman social life, and it is designed to turn dinner into a test of core strength and digestion. The host, your friend's wealthier acquaintance, points to a spot. "You're on the imus," he says, gesturing to the couch on the left. Here is how the hierarchy works. The couch opposite the door is the medius, middle, where the most important guests sit. The couch to the right is the summus, high, reserved for the host and his family. The couch to the left is the imus, low. That's the cheap seats. That's you. And within each couch there are 3 positions, top, middle, and bottom. You are at the bottom of the bottom couch. You are essentially the footrest of the dinner party. You climb onto the mattress. You don't sit cross-legged. You lie down on your stomach, then twist your body so you are resting on your left elbow, your legs stretching out behind the person to your right. Your feet are essentially in your neighbor's face, and someone else's feet are near yours. It is an intimate tangle of limbs. Now, try to relax. You have to hold this pose for the next 3 to 4 hours. Your left arm is the only thing keeping you propped up. If your shoulder gives out, you face plant into the hors d'oeuvres. Your right hand is your only utensil. Forks do not exist. You have a spoon for soup, but for everything else, meat, bread, vegetables, you use your fingers. Imagine trying to cut a piece of tough pork while balancing on one elbow. You can't. You have to tear at it, or hope the slaves cut it into bite-sized pieces beforehand. If they didn't, you are gnawing on a bone sideways, looking like a lion protecting its kill. The first course arrives, the gazpacho. It's a mix of appetizers, olives, eggs, maybe some dormice. Yes, dormice. The Romans fattened these little rodents in terracotta jars called glorarium until they are round and plump, then roast them with honey and poppy seeds. You hesitantly pick up a dormouse by its tail, which is arguably the polite way to handle a rodent snack, and take a bite. It's sweet, sticky, and crunchy. But you need something to wash it down. A slave fills your cup. The wine is thick, dark, and syrupy. You take a sip. It is incredibly sweet, with a rich, velvety mouthfeel. Excellent vintage, the host boasts, sweetened with sapa. Stop. Put the cup down. Sapa, or defrutum, is grape. Must that has been boiled down until it reduces to a thick syrup. It's a standard sweetener in a world without sugarcane. But the Romans, in their infinite culinary wisdom, prefer to boil this syrup in lead pots. They discovered that copper pots make the syrup taste bitter, but lead pots give it a sweet, pleasant finish. What they have inadvertently created is lead acetate, a compound known to chemists as sugar of lead. It is a potent neurotoxin. As you drink that delicious wine, you are ingesting a heavy dose of heavy metal. Historians and toxicologists still argue fiercely about the extent of this lead poisoning. Some claim it was widespread enough to cause mass infertility, gout, which is aggravated by lead, and the erratic behavior of emperors like Caligula and Nero. Did lead poisoning cause the fall of Rome? Probably not on its own. The empire had plenty of political and economic problems that didn't require brain damage to explain, but a ruling class suffering from chronic neurotoxicity certainly didn't help matters. Getty Images. For you right now, the danger isn't the collapse of civilization, it's the immediate saturnine gout that might hit your toes tomorrow. But you can't refuse the drink. That would be an insult. So you sip your poison, smiling at the host. Speaking of the host, take a look at what he is eating. You look at your plate. You have a small pile of beans and that dormouse. You look at his plate. He has a mullet. The fish, not the haircut. Fresh oysters and truffle-stuffed boar. This is the famous inequality of the dinner party. The Roman poet Martial wrote scathing epigrams about hosts who drank fine wine while serving their guests vinegar, or who ate mushrooms while their clients got scraps. I am invited to dinner, not to a viewing of your dinner, he complained. But in this society, food is status. The fact that you are eating worse food at the same table is the point. It reinforces the pecking order. As the main course, the mense primi, drags on, your left arm starts to go numb. You shift your weight, trying to find relief, but the couch is crowded. Your stomach is compressed by the awkward angle. Indigestion is practically guaranteed. The Roman physician Celsus actually recommended that you should eat in a way that allows you to digest easily, but he also recommended induced vomiting if you overindulged. This brings us to the most famous myth of Roman dining, the vomitorium. You might be looking around for a room where people go to throw up so they can eat more. You won't find one. That is a linguistic misunderstanding. A vomitorium is an architectural feature, the wide corridor in a stadium, like the ones you used at the Colosseum, that vomits the crowds out into the street. The idea that Romans had a dedicated puke room is a later invention, likely exaggerated by Victorian moralists to make the Romans look even more decadent. However, that doesn't mean vomiting didn't happen. At high-end banquets, gluttony is a sport. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, looked down on this behavior with disgust, writing, "They vomit so they may eat, and eat so they may vomit." But for a guy like you, on the cheap couch, wasting food is unthinkable. You keep yours down, despite the lead wine and the compressed stomach. The conversation flows around the room. It's the usual mix of gossip, politics, and chariot racing stats. Someone makes a joke about the emperor, and everyone laughs, but nervously. You notice people glancing at the slaves standing against the wall. Are they spies? In Rome, you never really know. A slave who reports his master for treason can be rewarded with freedom. So, the party stays light. No one mentions the rising taxes or the rumors of rebellion on the frontier. Finally, the dessert course, the second day mensae, arrives. It's fruit, nuts, and more of that lead-sweetened wine. You are feeling heavy. The alcohol, the fatigue, and the sheer caloric density of the meal are weighing you down. Your eyes are getting heavy. The lamps in the room are flickering, casting long, dancing shadows on the frescoes. You yearn for your bed. Even that straw sack in the attic sounds like heaven right now. You just want to close your eyes. But the dinner isn't just about food. It's about endurance. You cannot leave before the host dismisses you, That would be social suicide. So you stay, smiling, nodding, your elbow screaming in protest, your liver processing the heavy metals. Eventually, the host signals the end. He calls for the commissatio, the final drinking round, to be finished. Guests start to slide off the couches, groaning as they stretch their cramped limbs. You grab your napkin, quickly wrap a few leftover figs and a crust of bread inside it, and tuck it into your tunic. This isn't stealing, it's expected. It's breakfast for tomorrow. You stumble toward the door, thanking the host profusely for the generous meal. You step out of the warm, lamp-lit cocoon of the dining room, and then you hit the wall of blackness. It is night in Rome. You might think you know darkness. You've been camping. You've seen a power outage. But you have never seen a city of 1 million people with absolutely no streetlights. The moon is hidden behind clouds. The buildings block the stars. It is a solid, suffocating ink-black void. And out there, in that void, the rules of civilization effectively vanish. The praetors and their laws have gone to bed. The soldiers are in their barracks. The streets now belong to a different cast of characters: the muggers, the murderers, and the body snatchers. You have to walk home. It's only a mile, but it might as well be a journey through a war zone. You hesitate at the threshold, waiting for your eyes to adjust, but they don't. There is nothing to adjust to. You step out. The silence of the day has been replaced by a new set of sounds. The stealthy scrape of sandals, the distant scream of a victim, and the rumble of the heavy supply wagons that are finally allowed to move. Good luck. You stand at the threshold of the house, staring into the abyss. In the modern world, night is rarely ever truly dark. We have streetlights, neon signs, car headlights, and the ambient glow of the city reflecting off the clouds. This is light pollution, and we complain about it because it hides the stars. But here, in ancient Rome, you would give your left kidney for a little bit of light pollution. The darkness before you is absolute. It is a physical weight. The narrow streets, flanked by tall insulae that block out the moon, are essentially canyons of ink. Unless there is a full moon and a clear sky, you literally cannot see your hand in front of your face. You take a tentative step forward, your sandals scuffing against the stone. You are now playing the most dangerous game in the empire, walking home. You are alone. You don't have a lanternarius. This is a specific type of slave whose entire job is to walk in front of his master holding a lantern or a torch. If you see a light moving down the street, it's a sign of wealth. It means someone important is coming, surrounded by bodyguards. You, however, are armed only with your wits and that napkin full of leftover figs. You keep one hand on the wall of the building to guide you. The stone is rough and cold. You move slowly, shuffling your feet. Why shuffle? Because the Roman street is an obstacle course. There are potholes. There are piles of refuse. There are sleeping beggars. And most terrifyingly, there are open sewer grates. The drainage system in Rome is advanced, yes, but safety standards are non-existent. A stone slab covering a drain might have broken or been stolen weeks ago, leaving a gaping hole in the middle of the road. If you step into it in the dark, you break a leg. And in a world without orthopedic surgery, a broken leg is often a slow death sentence. You become a cripple, unable to work, unable to climb the stairs to your room, unable to survive. So you shuffle. Suddenly, you freeze. You hear footsteps, not the heavy rhythmic march of soldiers, but the scuffing, erratic steps of a group. Crime in Rome is rampant. There is no police force in the way we understand it. There is no 911. If you scream, people in the apartments above might hear you, but they won't come down. They will lock their doors tighter. You are entering the domain of the grassatores, the highwaymen, the muggers, the bored gangs of young men looking for a victim. There is a terrifying historical anecdote about the Emperor Nero. According to the historian Suetonius, who loved a good scandal, Nero used to dress up in a disguise at night and roam the streets with his friends, beating up random passers-by, stabbing them, and throwing them into the sewers. It was essentially a Clockwork Orange, but the gang leader was the head of state. If the emperor does it, imagine what the common criminals do. You press yourself into a doorway, holding your breath. The footsteps get closer. You see the faint glow of a torch. A group of men passes by, laughing, drunk, carrying clubs. They are looking for trouble. You are invisible in the shadow. They pass. You exhale, your heart hammering against your ribs like a trapped bird. You continue your journey, but now the silence is broken by a new sound, a low, rumbling vibration that you can feel through the soles of your sandals. It grows louder, turning into a thunderous clatter of wood on stone. The wagons have arrived. Remember the Lex Julia Municipalis? The law that banned wagons during the day? Well, the sun is down, which means the ban is lifted. The floodgates are open. All the supplies for a city of 1 million people, grain, wine, timber, stone, have to be moved now. A massive wagon, pulled by 4 oxen, comes barreling down the narrow street. The driver is shouting, cracking his whip. The iron-rimmed wheels are grinding against the basalt cobblestones, creating a noise that is deafening. You flatten yourself against the wall again. The wagon is so wide, it takes up almost the entire street. The hub of the wheel spins inches from your shins. If you were standing 3 inches to the left, you would be crushed. This is the irony of the Roman night. It is simultaneously pitch black and incredibly loud. The poet Juvenal famously complained that insomnia causes more deaths amongst Roman invalids than any other factor, and that the crossing of wagons in the narrow winding streets would be sufficient to wake the dead. The city never sleeps, it just changes shifts. The day belongs to the pedestrians, the night belongs to the logistics. As the wagon passes, leaving a cloud of dust in its wake, you slip back into the street. You are halfway home. You turn a corner and see a flicker of light ahead. It's a station of the Vigiles. The Vigiles are the closest thing Rome has to a police force, but their primary job is firefighting. They are organized into 7 cohorts, each responsible for 2 regions of the city. They patrol the streets carrying buckets, hame, axes, dolabre, and squirt guns, siphons, to fight the constant threat of arson. You might think, oh good, the police, I'm safe. Not quite. The vigils are freedmen, former slaves. In the rigid social hierarchy of Rome, this makes them looked down upon by the freeborn citizens. They have authority, sure, but they are also known for being rough. If they catch you walking alone at night, they might assume you are the criminal. They might stop you, question you, and if you don't have a good answer or a bribe, they might drag you to the prefect. Historians still argue about the extent of their police powers. Did they investigate murders? Did they stop muggings? Or were they just there to stop the city from burning down and catch runaway slaves? The consensus is that they acted as a paramilitary night watch, keeping a lid on the worst chaos, but they weren't detectives. They were a brute force solution to urban disorder. You decide to avoid them. You take a detour down an even narrower alley, an Angiportus. The smell here is intense. This is a popular spot for people to dump their chamber pots. You step carefully, testing the ground. Squish. You wince. You don't want to know what that was. As you navigate this sensory nightmare, you have to contend with the supernatural again. The night is the time of the lemures, the restless, angry ghosts of those who died violently or were not buried properly. The Romans are terrified of them. Ovid describes rituals where the head of the household spits black beans out of his mouth at midnight to feed these ghosts and make them go away. With these beans, I redeem me and mine, he says. You don't have any black beans. You just have your fear. You walk faster, muttering a quick prayer to Hecate, the goddess of crossroads and magic. You turn the final corner. There it is. Your insula. It looms in the darkness, a towering silhouette against the slightly lighter sky. It looks like a fortress, but you know it's a trap. You have to get back inside. You approach the door, which is unlocked. The ostiarius, doorman, is likely asleep or gone. You step into the stairwell. It is even darker inside than it was outside. You feel your way up the stairs, counting them. 1, 2, 3, turn. 1, 2, 3, turn. You hear the sounds of the building sleeping, snoring, coughing, the rustle of straw. You reach your floor, you find your door, you fumble with the latch. It opens. You step inside, crossing the threshold, right foot first, always. You close the door and slide the wooden bolt home. You lean your back against the wood and slide down to the floor. You made it. You survived the commute, the work, the heat, the crowds, the dinner, and the walk home. You are safe in your box. But as your heart rate slows down, a new reality sets in. You are back where you started. You are poor. You are tired. And tomorrow, you have to do it all over again. The cycle of the client, the struggle for food, the fear of the law, it never ends. Is this it? Is this all there is? A thought creeps into your mind, a dangerous thought. There is a way out. It's not suicide, and it's not crime. It's the one path that offers a guaranteed salary, a pension, and a chance to see the world beyond these cramping walls. It offers glory. It offers respect. The legions. You look at your hands, stained with the day's grime. You are young enough, you are healthy enough, mostly. Why stay here and rot in a tenement when you could be marching under the eagle? Why be a victim in Rome when you could be a conqueror in Gaul? But before you sign your life away to the emperor, you need to know what you're actually getting into. The recruiting posters, figuratively speaking, show shiny armor and orderly ranks. They don't show the reality of the pack, the march, and the vine staff of the centurion. You stand up and move to your window, looking out at the dark city. You are considering the ultimate career change. But be warned, the army is a machine that grinds men down just as effectively as the city does, just with better organization. You stand at your window, looking out at the sleeping, dangerous city. The decision forms in your mind like a callus. You are done with the scraping, the bowing, the fear of the landlord, and the uncertainty of where your next bowl of lentils is coming from. You want out. And in Rome, the most respectable exit strategy for a poor citizen is the legion. It sounds perfect, doesn't it? 3 square meals a day, a steady salary of 900 sesterci a year, plus bonuses from the emperor, high-quality leather boots, and a pension that includes a plot of land after 25 years. You imagine yourself in glistening armor, standing guard on the walls of a fortress in Syria or Britannia, a hero of the empire. So, the next morning, instead of heading to your patron's house to beg for crumbs, you march to the Campus Martius to enlist. You are ready to trade your freedom for security. But as you are about to discover, the Roman army is not a career. It is a machine designed to strip you of your humanity and rebuild you as a weapon. First, you have to pass the probatio, the intake exam. A recruiting officer looks you over. He isn't checking your SAT scores, he is checking your teeth and your eyes. He is looking for country strength. The Roman military writer Vegetius famously advised recruiters to avoid city boys like you because they are soft, lazy, and accustomed to luxury, even if your luxury is a rat-infested attic. He preferred peasants who were used to digging ditches and carrying manure. Historians still argue about the strictness of the height requirement. Vegetius claims the ideal recruit was 6 Roman feet tall, about 5'10", but archaeological evidence from skeletons suggests the average soldier was significantly shorter, maybe around 5'7". If you are short, they might still take you, but you'll be mocked relentlessly. Once you pass the physical, you face the signaculum. This is not a piece of paper. It is a tattoo, or brand, of the legion's mark, usually placed on your hand or forearm. In the modern world, getting a tattoo is an act of rebellion. In Rome, it is an act of ownership. You are now government property. If you desert, that mark will scream your crime to everyone who sees it. Then comes the sacramentum, the sacred oath. You swear by the gods and the emperor to obey orders, to never desert, and to die if necessary. This isn't just a legal contract, it is a religious curse. You are effectively offering yourself as a human sacrifice to the state. If you break this oath, you aren't just a criminal, you are nephas, impure, an abomination to the gods. Congratulations, you are a tiro, a recruit. Now, put on your armor. You are issued a lorica segmentata, the famous plate armor, or hamada, chainmail. It's heavy, about 20 pounds. Then the helmet, Then the shield, scutum, which is a curved rectangular door of plywood and leather weighing another 22 pounds. Then the sword, gladius, and the dagger, pugio. But that's just the fighting gear. Now comes the luggage. You are handed a furka, a T-shaped carrying pole. On this pole, you must hang your entire life: a bronze cooking pot, a patera, pan, a water flask, a basket for moving earth, a pickaxe, a saw, a sickle, a coil of rope, 3 days' worth of grain, and 2 heavy wooden stakes for the palisade. Total weight? Conservative estimates put it at 60 to 80 pounds. And you have to walk with it. Not just walk, march. You are now one of Marius's mules. This nickname dates back to the reforms of General Gaius Marius, who realized that baggage trains slowed down the army, so he made the soldiers carry everything themselves. You are a beast of burden. You are expected to march 20 Roman miles, about 18.5 miles, in 5 hours, doing the military step. If you lag behind, the centurion is waiting. Meet your new nightmare, the centurion. He is the backbone of the legion, a veteran who has risen through the ranks by being tougher than everyone else. He carries a symbol of his office, the vetus. It is a vine staff, a rod made of twisted grapewood. It looks like a walking stick. It is actually a tool for breaking ribs. The centurion uses the vitus for correction. Your alignment in the shield wall is off, thwack. Your tunic is loose, thwack. You look tired, thwack. There was a famous centurion during the mutinies in Germany nicknamed Cedo Alterum, bring me another. Why? Because he would break his vine staff over a soldier's back and immediately shout for a fresh one. He broke so many staffs, he became a legend of brutality. You realize quickly that the enemy, the Gauls, the Parthians, the Germans, are a distant, abstract threat. The real threat is the man commanding you. He owns your body. He can beat you, starve you, or work you to death, and there is no HR department to file a complaint with. And let's talk about the punishments. If the vine staff is for minor infractions, the serious crimes get creative solutions. If you are caught sleeping on watch, you face the fustuarium. This is a death sentence where your fellow soldiers, the men you eat and sleep with, are ordered to club you to death. It ensures collective responsibility. Everyone is complicit in maintaining discipline. If you show cowardice, you might be put on barley rations. This sounds like a dietary preference, but in Rome, barley is food for livestock. Wheat is for men. By forcing you to eat barley, the legion is telling you that you are an animal. But the ultimate horror, the one that whispers through the camp like a ghost story, is decimatio. This happens when an entire unit displays cowardice or mutinies. The commander gathers the cohort. Every 10th man is selected by lot. It doesn't matter if you were the bravest man in the line or the coward who ran first. It is pure chance. The unlucky 10% are then bludgeoned to death by the other 90%. It is a psychological trauma designed to bond the survivors in blood and fear. Discipline comes from the word discipulus, student, but in the legions, the lesson is simple: obey or die. But most days aren't filled with battles or executions. They are filled with digging. This is the great secret of the Roman army. You are basically an armed construction worker. The legions built the roads, the aqueducts, the bridges, and the forts. Every single night, no matter how tired you are, you have to build a fortified camp, castra, from scratch. You dig a ditch, pile up the earth, plant your stakes, and pitch your leather tent. A quirky detail about camp life is the watchword. Every night, a new password is distributed on a small tablet called a tessera. It might be something like victory or Venus. It travels from the commander down to the humblest sentry. If you forget it or say it wrong, you die. It's the highest stakes game of telephone in history. You look at your hands again. In the city, they were dirty with mud and ink. Here, they are blistered and calloused from the pickaxe. You are exhausted in a way you didn't know was possible. Your shoulders are permanently bruised from the furka. Your feet are hard as hooves. And yet, there is something seductive about it. You belong to something. You are part of a brotherhood. You worship the standards, the golden eagle, Aquila, with a fervor that rivals any temple in Rome. You have a purpose. The chaos of the city, with its confusing social rules and petty insults, is gone. Here, the rules are simple. Stand in line, hold your shield, stab the guy in front of you. But as you march through the rain in some godforsaken forest in Germania, eating hardtack and smelling the unwashed bodies of your 8 tent mates, the contubernium, you wonder if the glory is worth it. You are a cog in a machine that grinds up nations, and it will grind you up just as easily. You think back to your little apartment, the fire risk, the smell, the hunger, and you realize that you have simply traded one form of precarious survival for another. In the city, you might starve. In the army, you might catch a spear in the gut or die of dysentery in a muddy camp. The realization hits you. There is no escape. The empire is a trap. Whether you are a citizen or a soldier, you are just a fuel for the fire of Rome. The sun begins to rise over the distant hills. The trumpet, the cornu, sounds the wake-up call. It is a mournful, brassy wail that echoes through the valley. You struggle to your feet, your joints popping. You strap on your armor, you lift your pack. The weight settles onto your shoulders, familiar and crushing. But you aren't in Germania. You aren't in the Legion. You blink, shaking your head. You are still standing at your window in the insula. It was just a fantasy, a what if. You are still here in the city. The noise of the wagons is fading. The first gray light of dawn is creeping over the 7 hills. You haven't enlisted, you haven't sworn the oath, you are still free, technically. But as the city wakes up for another day of chaos, you realize that your freedom looks an awful lot like a different kind of prison. You turn away from the window, you are exhausted, the adrenaline of the imagined march fades, leaving you with the crushing reality of your insomnia. You need to sleep. You have to sleep. Because if you don't sleep, you won't survive tomorrow. You collapse onto your pallet. The straw mattress crunches beneath you, a sound that is loud in the small room, but insignificant compared to the auditory assault coming from outside. You are physically shattered. Your legs ache from the standing, the walking, and the crouching. Your skin feels tight from the sun and the sweat. Your mind is racing with images of lions, lawyers, and lead-sweetened wine. You pull the thin, scratchy wool blanket up to your chin. You close your eyes. You are ready to drift off. You need to drift off. But Rome has other plans. Remember the wagons, the ones we saw rumbling through the streets earlier? They haven't stopped. In fact, they have multiplied. The Lex Julia Municipalis, that traffic law Julius Caesar passed to keep the streets clear during the day, has turned the night into a logistical nightmare. Every single piece of lumber, every block of marble, every sack of grain needed to feed and build this metropolis is moving right now. The sound of iron-rimmed wheels grinding against basalt cobblestones is not a soothing white noise. It is a high-pitched, bone-rattling screech. It echoes off the stone walls of the narrow alleyways, amplifying as it travels up to your attic window. It sounds like a subway train with bad brakes is driving through your bedroom over and over again. The poet Juvenal, who is practically the patron saint of Roman insomnia, wrote that, "Here in Rome, many a sick man dies for want of sleep." He wasn't exaggerating. He claimed that even the Emperor Claudius would be woken up by the noise, and Claudius was famous for being able to sleep through anything. If the emperor can't sleep in his palace on the Palatine Hill, what chance do you have in a rickety tenement shaking with every passing cart? You roll over, trying to bury your ear in the straw. But the noise isn't just mechanical, it's human. The wagon drivers are shouting at their oxen. They are shouting at each other. They are cursing the mud, the dark, and the gods. The vocabulary of a Roman muleteer is vibrant, creative, and incredibly loud. And it's not just the traffic. The walls of your insula are paper thin. You are intimately involved in the lives of your neighbors. To your left, a baby is crying, a universal sound of distress that transcends history. To your right, a couple is arguing about money. Above you, someone is pacing, the floorboards creaking rhythmically like a torture device. You lie there, staring at the dark ceiling, and you realize that privacy is a concept that simply hasn't been invented yet. You are a cell in a hive, and the hive is buzzing. You try to use a sleep aid. The Romans didn't have melatonin gummies, but they had their own remedies. You might have chewed on some lettuce earlier. Quirky historical fact. Romans believed the lettuce was a powerful sedative. In the early Republic, they ate it at the end of the meal to induce sleep. Later, in the Empire, they started eating it at the beginning to stimulate appetite, but the belief in its soporific qualities remained. Galen, the famous physician, wrote about how he used to boil lettuce and drink the water to help him sleep in his old age. If the lettuce doesn't work, there's always poppy juice, opium. It's legal, it's available, and it's dangerous. A little too much, and you don't wake up at all. You decide to skip the heavy narcotics and stick to counting sheep, which is actually a relevant visualization since you might have been a shepherd in a past life, or at least you're wearing their wool. But as you lie there in the dark, your mind starts to wander to the scary stuff. The Romans are deeply superstitious about sleep. They believe that nightmares aren't just bad dreams. They are attacks. The incubus is a male Demnophon who sits on your chest while you sleep, crushing the breath out of you. The succubus is the female equivalent. If you wake up with sleep paralysis, unable to move, unable to scream, you don't think neurological glitch. You think, there is a demon sitting on me. Historians still argue about the sleep patterns of the ancients. There is a prominent theory, championed by historian Roger Akirk, that people before the Industrial Revolution slept in two distinct chunks, biphasic sleep. You would go to bed at sunset, sleep for 4 hours, the first sleep, wake up for an hour or two to pray, chat, or have sex, and then go back for a second sleep. If this is true, the noise outside makes a lot more sense. The middle of the night isn't dead time, it's active time. But for you, the modern time traveler used to a solid 8-hour block, this broken rhythm is torture. You wake up at 2 a.m., and instead of a quiet house, you hear the city partying, fighting, and working. You can't get back to the second sleep. You are stuck in a limbo of exhaustion. You close your eyes again. You try to focus on your breathing. In, out, in, out. Crash! Something falls in the alleyway. A dog starts barking. Not a cute, domestic bark, but the feral, aggressive snarling of a canis guarding a warehouse. Then, another dog answers. Soon, the entire neighborhood is a chorus of howls. You sit up, defeated. You are sweating. The room is stiflingly hot because you had to close the shutter to block the noise, but now you are suffocating. You open the shutter to let in air, and the noise rushes back in. It is a no-win scenario. You look out the window. The sky is starting to turn a bruised purple over the Esquiline Hill. The stars are fading. The wagons are starting to clear out, replaced by the early risers, the bakers, the teachers, the clients rushing to the salutatio. The cycle is starting again. You realize, with a heavy heart, that you wouldn't survive a day in the Roman Empire. Not because of the lions, not because of the lead poisoning, and not because of the crime. You wouldn't survive because you simply cannot rest. The human body needs recovery. It needs a sanctuary. And in this city of 1 million strivers, huddled together in wobbly towers, sanctuary does not exist. You are always on. You are always watching your back. You are always listening. The cortisol levels in your body are permanently spiked. In the modern world, we complain about stress, but we have doors that lock. We have silence. We have soft mattresses. Here, stress is the default state of existence. As the first ray of sunlight hits the clay tiles of the roof opposite you, you feel a wave of profound homesickness. You miss your toothbrush. You miss your fridge. You miss your noise-canceling headphones. You miss the concept of a weekend. You lay back down, watching the dust motes dance in the shaft of light. You made it through 24 hours. You saw the glory and the grime. You ate the fish sauce. You scraped the dirt. You dodged the chamber pots. But could you do it again tomorrow, and the day after that, and for the rest of your life? Probably not. The Roman Empire was built on the backs of people who could endure this grinding reality. They were tougher than us, perhaps. Or maybe they were just more resigned. They found joy in the small things. A good game of dice, a cold cup of watered wine, a festival day. They lived, they loved, and they slept eventually in the midst of the chaos. But you are a tourist in time, and your visa has just expired. The The sounds of the morning are rising, the cries of the water sellers, the hammer of the blacksmith. Okay, take a deep breath, let it out slowly. Let's step away from the noise of the Via Appia. Let's fade out the rumble of the wagons and the shouting of the centurions. Let the smell of smoke and garum drift away, replaced by the clean, cool air of your own room. You are not in a rickety wooden tower anymore. You are not lying on straw. You are safe in your own bed, supported by modern springs and soft foam. There are no falling tiles, no marble benches, and definitely no communal sponges here. The only thing you have to navigate is the landscape of your own dreams. Feel the weight of the day lifting off your shoulders. That heavy wool tunic is gone, replaced by soft sheets. The tension in your legs from climbing the 7 hills is melting away. You don't have to impress a patron. You don't have to watch the gladiators. You don't have to do anything at all. History is full of struggle, noise, and chaos. It's fascinating to visit, to peek behind the curtain and see how our ancestors lived, but it is a relief to come back to the quiet, to the stillness. Visualize the Roman city shrinking down, smaller and smaller, until it's just a snow globe on a shelf in a quiet library. The dust has settled, the lights are out, the empire has been resting for 2,000 years, and now it's your turn to rest too. Listen to the hum of your fan or the silence of your house. It's a luxury, that silence. Cherish it. Let it wrap around you like a warm, clean cloak. You are safe. You are comfortable. You are home.